Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to part 7 of the design system series. In this video, we're going to learn about icons, illustrations, as well as spacing and how to add them in a design system. And with this video, we'll be completing the atomic elements of our design system. Going forward from the next video onwards, we'll be learning about the new entity known as molecules, which includes something like buttons, selectors, indicators, and a different more complex components. So from next video onwards, we'll be learning about those. With today's video, let's first learn about icons. And without further ado, let's get started. So before we jump into Figma and understand how to add icons into a design system, let's first understand some really basic and simple principles for creating perfect icons and prepping them for your design system. Typically, designing icons involves three crucial elements. The first one is known as base grid. And base grid is something that helps you. It's a grid that helps you to create icon in a specific parameter. Typically, all icons are created in a square sort of a grid. And if you see here in this example, we are using a 24 by 24 grid, which is a really popular size for creating icons. And each smaller square that you see here is 1 by 1 size. Okay, so base grid is nothing but a template that helps us to create or to lay our foundation for creating an icon in a specific size. The second crucial element is known as safe space or safe padding. It's nothing, it's just like a breathing space around your icon. So if 24 by 24 was the size of the base grid, 2 pixels from the edges, this boundary that you see, the gray boundary, is known as safe padding. It just adds breathing space into your designs and also helps if you, let's say, using two icons close by. Since both the icons will have inherent breathing space, the safe padding, they will not look too cluttered when used next to each other. So this is just a breather that you have to add inside your base grid. Okay. The third thing is known as key shapes. We typically have three primary key shapes. So we have a square, we have a circle, and we have rectangles, vertical and horizontal rectangles. This is a basic size, actually basic shape and proportion that helps you or guides you to create simplistic icons. If you are creating icon, it could be a combination of circle, it could be a pure circle, it could be a square, it could be a rectangle, or it could be a combination of any of these three key shapes. But if you're defining anything, if you're designing anything, it should not cross these boundaries. So if it's a circular icon, it should reside within the circle. If it's a square icon, it should reside within the square. And if it's a vertical rectangle or a horizontal rectangle, it should reside within this key shape. So just help us or guide us to create icons in a particular shape. Here are some quick examples. So for example, the first icon, if you see, is a square icon with rounded edges. So it has to fit inside the square template. Circular icon has to fit inside the circular key shape. Rectangular one has to fit in the rectangular one, and a vertical rectangle has to fit in the vertical rectangular key shapes. So key shapes just help us guide creating icons in different shape while maintaining the proportions. So now that we have understood the process of creating an icon, let's quickly understand the different sizes of grid that we are used for creating these icon templates. So we understood that icon grid is something as a base layer foundation on top of which you create your icons. Now the base level icon grid can be of different sizes. So we talked about 24 pixel size, which is a really popular size in app UI, but you can also go smaller than that. You can go to 16 pixels. And if you see, here is a 16 pixel grid and all the dimension of a circle, square, rectangle is mentioned here. So 16 pixel grid looks like this. And you have your safe area, you have the smaller icons as well. We typically don't recommend going below 16 pixel because then it will hinder your legibility of the icons. So 16 is what you should keep in mind. This is the basic level. This is the smallest that you can go. Beyond 16, you have 24. So now 24 pixel is a really popular size for icon creation in app UIs. And these are the parameters. You can pause the screen and check out the different dimensions that are mentioned here. After 24, you have 32. You can go a little bit bigger than that. You can also go 48, 64, and 96 pixel as well. So you can go from really small to really large icon sizes. And these numbers are derived from 8-point grid system. I've talked about 8-point grid system in great details in one of my older videos. I will link them above or below in the description. You can check it out. So these numbers are derived from 8-point grid system. So these are different size, and shout out to 123 done user on Figma community who has created this slide, and I will link this slide below as well. If you want to check out, go to Figma community and check out this user and just give them a thumbs up. Okay, So this was about icon grid. Now let's jump into Figma and let's see how can we add our icons which we have created into our design system. So we're in Figma right now, and I have already set up a few icons here just to give an example of how things are done. So I've created these icons following our base grid icon grid template, and these are the icons in the 24 by 24 icon grid size. And I have for now turned on the fill to these artboards so that you can see. So all of them has a white fill so that you can see these icons properly, the boundary of these icons. So all of them are in 24 by 24 grid enclosure. Okay. Now what we have to do is we'll understand how can we add these into our existing design system. So how can we create components and how to do naming. And naming is a very crucial part of creating or adding your icons into a design system. So let's understand the logic behind creating different naming system or different nomenclatures for your icons. Okay, so I'm going to take the example of my first icon here. So this is my first icon, and the first sort of naming is based on the state of your icon. So for example, let's say in your company you have different icons, and all of the icon, or maybe I would say majority of your icon, let's say have a state attached to it. So for example, if you press an icon, it just changes into a filled shape. So if it's a stroke icon and you click on it, it changes into a filled shape like this. Or you have some icons like this and they changes into a fill shape. So what I'm trying to say is, if let's say your all of your or majority of your icons have a press state or a different state, then what you can do is you can follow this sort of a naming structure. So what you have to do is, if you see here the naming structure here, it says icons / home / stroke. So by the way, I've explained why do we add stroke slash. So if you add slash, it just creates a folder structure. So the first folder will be named icon, the second folder is called home, and the third folder will be the name of the icon where this icon will reside. So adding a slash in the nomenclature just creates a folder like structure when you change this into a component. So now the name nomenclature, in case all of your or majority of your icon has a corresponding press state or a different state, the nomenclature has to be something like this, where you say icon, which is the type of this element. So all of these elements are under a bigger group known as icons, the atomic element, the atomic entity. The next thing is the name of this icon. So this is a home icon, so I'm just calling it home. And then what type of variant it is. Is it a stroke icon? So I'm just calling it stroke. And if it's a filled icon, I will follow the same structure. I will say icon home / filled. Okay. And similarly, you have to follow for others as well. So if you see this is an app icon, so it's called icon app / stroke and app icon / filled. So this, you have to make sure that in case your all the icons have a different state, a filled state or a stroke state, let's make for example, then in that case you have to follow this nomenclature. So the nomenclature is the atomic element, which is the icon element here, followed by the name of the icon, followed by the type. So it's a fill icon or a stroke icon or a line icon, whatever you want to call it, that should be here. Okay. And I'll explain you the benefit of this sort of a nomenclature. So once that is done, once you have completed this, what you have to do is select your icon. So what I'll do is I'll just select all of my icons. I've done the same thing actually. And first of all, I'll remove a fill because there is no need of a fill in your icon. Your icon has to have a transparent background. So first remove the fill if you have added by mistake. And the next thing you have to do is come here and do create multiple components. So it'll create multiple components and all of them are your main components because it has a solid diamond. Now, if you don't understand difference between the solid diamonds and the hollow diamonds, I've also explained components in my older videos. Just go on to my channel and figure that out. But these are your main components now. Okay. So once you have done that, now we understood the nomenclature. The benefit of this is, let me just quickly show you. So when you go to your assets panel, since you have now converted them into a component, and when I come here into this asset panel, you see state-based icon, the page where I've created this icon, have a category and it says icon. And if you see, it has multiple categories now. So now you have apps and it has this two variants, filled and stroke. Similarly, you have two other variants for bell icon, right? So now it's creating two variants for all of my icons that I've created. Now let's say I just pick up this icon here and I've just added this into, let's say, on one of my UIs. Now if you see here, it says filled, and if I want to swap it, I will be easily able to swap it. So what will happen is, with this sort of terminology, is that all the variations of this particular icon will appear here and you will be able to quickly switch between them. So that's the benefit. If all of your or a majority of your icons have a different state, you can add them here in this one grouping. So all of the variations of the heart icon will appear here. Similarly for other cases as well. You can still be able to swap them with different icons. So if you have to swap them, let's say with a different icon altogether, you can still go back and you can figure out all the icons that you want to swap them. So this nomenclature really does help my cause in case I have all the icons with a corresponding or a different state altogether with different states. Okay. So this is one sort of a naming system. And do remember that icons is all about, like, it's less about creating the icon, but it's more about naming them properly. So this is the first bit. Now let's move on to our second sort of thing, which is known as category based icons. For example, let's say you have your app is majorly using, let's say, one sort of icon, which is a line icon. But in some cases, for few icons, you have other states as well. So for example, a few icons might have a press state as well, or these grayed out or non-interactive states as well. So in those cases where your majority of icons have one sort of a guideline, whereas only a few anomalies have a different states as well, in those sort of cases, you have to follow a different sort of a nomenclature. The nomenclature that you have to follow is something like this, where what you have to do is you have to pick the element entity, which is similar as the previous one that I have explained. So the element entity is here, atomic entity is icon. The next thing is you have to figure out what kind of icon it is. So is it a stroke icon? Is it a filled icon? Is it an active icon? Whatever, big icon, small icon. The type of icon comes here and the actual icon names comes after that. So what will happen is it will create all the, so if you see in my case, in this example, majority of our icons is stroke icons. So all the stroke icons will be in one group. Okay. So with this nomenclature, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to club icons based on their categories. So all of these are stroke icons will be in one folder, and the other icons, which is the filled icon or the inactive icons, which are very rare in my design system, they will be in another folder. So the nomenclature I have to follow is something like this, which is the element, then the category or the type, and then the name of the icon. Similarly for the filled ones, if you see here, it's same icon / the type of the icon and then the actual name of the icon. And with this, what will happen is, let me just quickly show you. Icon / fill. So all the fill icons are combined in one place, whereas all the stroke icons are combined in one place. Okay. So this is a really handy trick. As I explained, if majority of your icons are in one style and only a few of them has anomaly and have different states, then you can follow this sort of a nomenclature. This sort of a nomenclature helps really well, whereas the previous one that I've explained helps when you have a corresponding state for everything, so that you can just know an icon by its name. So this is the second sort of nomenclature. I hope you understood it. Pause the video, slow it down, understood, grasp it a little bit, absorb what I have just said, so that you just get a little bit of hang for it. But the nomenclature is a really important part for your design system. So that's about it for the icon bit. If you have any doubt, just let me know in the comments. I'll explain it again. And now let's move into illustrations. So for understanding illustrations, we have a few illustrations here, a few male and female illustrations, and we typically call them avatars. Now the naming of these illustrations are similar to what we have done for icons. It's pretty similar. So if you see, we have two sort of categorization. So we have to use the category based naming nomenclature, and the nomenclature is the only important part for it. By the way, I've created these icons. I got these icons from an Illustrator file and I've just added them into this Figma file. So you can do that as well, or you can create in Figma directly. Now, what we have to do is for the nomenclature bit. So if you see, we have these female avatars here. So I'll just show you quickly how to name them. So for example, as I said, you have to use the category based nomenclature. Just to rename them, I'll just go here and try to rename it. So this is my first illustration. So I'll call it, let's say the name will be avatars or illustration, whatever you want to call it, you can do that. So this will be the atomic element type. So the element here is avatars. This is the way for icons, it was icons. For illustrations or for avatars, I'm calling it avatars. The next thing will be the type. So the type is here female. So I'm just gonna call it female and then /1. So this is the first character of the female avatar. So that's it. Now I'm done with the first naming. Similarly, I can do it for the others. Okay, so I've renamed all of them really quickly. Now, what we have to do is we'll select all of the illustrations that we have created, go on the top, and we'll click on create multiple components. Always click on this, and once you do that, you'll see solid diamonds in front of all the illustrations. And now we have converted every frame into a component. And once you do that, once you followed this nomenclature, let's see how this looks like. So you go into your assets panel, and I'll come to illustrations, which is our page. And if you see, it has two folders here, one female, and it has all the collection of female avatars, and one male where you have all the male collection avatars. And the benefit would be if you just drag it into one of your UIs, for example like this, and you see here, you'll be able to swap between them really easily. So all the male characters are grouped really nicely in one male folder, and all the female ones are again grouped nicely in one female folder. So you'll be able to swap between them, and you have to use the category based nomenclature here. So I hope you understood this bit, and it's a pretty simple, straightforward piece of nomenclature for your illustrations. Just import illustrations, all the vectors here, and name them properly. Just use what works best for your company, and then just create this nomenclature. So that's it. That's about it for the illustration bit. Now let's quickly move into spacings. So let's talk about the last piece of this video, which is known as spacing. So spacing is used, the spacing elements that we create for our design system is used to create consistent spacing across your UI elements, be it a margin, padding, or different UIs, text, icons, whatever you use. You have to use some sort of a spacing mechanism, a spacing measurement. And for that, we use this sort of a spacing. And these numbers that you see here are derived from 8-point grid system, which is a very popular grid system for creating different measurements in UI. So all of these numbers are basically a multiple of 8. And to create a spacing element in your design system, you typically create just a simple frame. And if you see it's just a frame, nothing much, and you add a simple fill to it, and you then have to do a proper naming for it. So these are the different squares. So 8-point means your frame is basically 8 by 8 size. Similarly, 16 means 16 by 16 size, 32 means 32 by 32 size. Okay. In 8-point grid system, as I've also explained in my older videos, where we also use two more sizes, which is like 4 and 2. So these sizes are used so that we can add more flexibility in your design. For example, you want to place two elements really close by in your UI, then you can go further below, which is like 4 and 2. So these are two anomalies which are added to just add more flexibility in your measurements. Okay. And in terms of creating a design system, it's very simple. You just create these squares for different measurement. If you want to go even above, you can go one above 64, but I think this is the max sizes that you can go with. And once you have created this, you have to add a proper nomenclature to it. So for example, the smallest element, we are calling it spacing, which is the type of the atomic element, as we are following all the nomenclatures. So spacing is the type of the atomic element /XS. So this is extra small size, which is the 2-point size. So that's why we are calling it XXS. Then you have the 4-point size, and we are calling it extra small. So spacing /extra small will be the name for it. The other one is small. So we are calling it spacing /S. And then we have medium. We are calling it spacing /M. And then we have large, spacing /L, and then extra large, spacing /XL. If you want to go beyond, then you can have XXL and XXL sizes. So it'll be just the multiple in the same progression. Okay, so 64 and going so forward. Okay, so these are different sizes that you create, and these are different names that you create, and these are all based on the 8-point grid system. Once all of this is done, once you have done the proper naming, select all of your spacing elements, all of the frames of the spacing element. By the way, if you want to put another nomenclature, you can also do that. You don't have to stick to small, medium, large, but this is a very convenient and a popular standardized nomenclature that is used across different industries. So use this, you can stick to this. Now select all of the frames that you have created and added the proper naming to them. And again, the same thing, you have to go here and create multiple components. So as soon as you do that multiple components, all of them have now been created into a component. Okay. So now this has been created, and if you go into your assets panel, you will be able to find them in the spacing tab. So if you see here, all the spacing have now been added, small, large, extra large, all of them have been added properly here. Now the second thing is how to use this spacing in your UI system. So now that you have created it, how will someone use this in their UI design? So let me quickly explain that as well. So here we have a app UI with me, and it contains a bunch of elements. Let's say I want to know, I have two buttons and I want to place them next to each other, and I want to know what should be the spacing between them. So what you can do is you can basically pull up a spacing from here. So let's say you want to pull up a spacing like medium, for example, and you place it here and you attach it here, and then you add your element here. So that's how you're adding a spacing here. If you see this spacing is too much, you can also go and swap it between, let's say, smaller one, and maybe then you can just move this element next to it. So what you're making sure is that your element, if you see, it's properly 8 distance, because you're using this as a guide, this spacing element as a guide. And once you have placed your element, and once you think that okay, this is the right size, you can just go ahead and delete that spacing element. So this spacing element is just used as a reference. And for example, let's say you also wanted to add rulers to this entire system. So let's say I'll enable ruler by hitting Shift and R, and now I want to add rulers on the edges. So what I can do is I can just, let's say, go and pick this medium one, and I'll just place it in the extreme edge. And now I can drag and drop my ruler here, pull up a ruler from here. Okay, and now I have created a ruler which is exactly the M size which we wanted. Okay, so 16 by 16 size, and the ruler is fixed here. So that's how you can also create like grids and rulers using this. So you use this entire spacing element as a guide or a mechanism, and once the work is done, once the purpose is sorted, you just delete that particular spacing element. So that's how you typically add spacing into your design system, and that's how you typically use them. And this makes it very easy for anyone in your team who is using this system to understand, okay, this is the consistent spacing that is allowed in your design system. So yeah, so that's how you create spacing and make everything more consistent and polished. And that's it for this video. I hope you understood the 3 fundamentals easily. I hope it was clear. If it's not clear, just let me know in the comments. I'll make more detailed videos on it. But this is it for today's video. I hope you liked the video. Do give me a thumbs up, do subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for the next part. Take care. Bye bye.